Why the ego resists unconditional experiencing. If unconditional experiencing is so evolutionary, why do most people resist it? Because the ego is designed for stability, not evolution. The ego's primary task is not growth. Its primary task is predictability and survival. From a biological perspective, the brain constantly asks one question: can I predict what will happen next? Predictability equals safety. Evolution, however, requires something very different: the willingness to move into the unknown. And this is exactly where the ego begins to resist. The ego's job: protect identity. The ego builds identity through accumulated experiences. It forms statements like, I am the rejected one. I am the responsible one. I am the one who always gets betrayed. I am the strong one who never needs help. These identities may have originated in painful experiences, but once formed they provide something the brain deeply values: familiarity. Even painful identities feel safer than uncertainty. Because the ego believes, if I know who I am, I know how the world works. Identity stability versus identity evolution. Unconditional experiencing threatens the ego because it requires something radical, letting identity remain flexible. Instead of freezing identity based on past experiences, unconditional experiencing asks, what if this experience is not defining me, but informing me? This creates a completely different orientation toward life. Identity stops being a rigid label and becomes a dynamic process. But ego fears this because evolving identity means stepping outside the old psychological map. And the ego interprets losing the old map as losing safety. The comfort of familiar pain. One of the most paradoxical aspects of human psychology is this: people often cling to painful experiences because they support a familiar identity. For example, someone who was repeatedly abandoned in childhood may unconsciously hold onto that identity. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because the identity provides predictability. If they believe abandonment is inevitable, the world becomes understandable. And the ego values understanding more than happiness. This is why many people unknowingly repeat the same relational patterns again and again. Not because they want pain, but because the ego prefers known pain over unknown possibilities. The evolutionary shift. Unconditional experiencing disrupts this pattern. Instead of asking, what does this experience say about who I am? It asks, what does this experience clarify about what I value? This subtle shift moves identity from fixed to evolving. And once identity becomes fluid, experiences stop reinforcing old trauma patterns. They start guiding conscious direction. But for the ego, this requires courage. Because evolving identity means stepping into territory where the old survival strategies no longer apply.